Hi everyone, this is a lesson on bats of North Carolina for Unit 8 mammals. Bats get a pretty bad reputation because of their misconceptions that they all suck blood or that they all carry disease. They are, aside from any negative impacts, some of the most vital organisms to our ecosystems here in North Carolina and any other ecosystems that are found. They are the second most diverse group of mammals outside of rodents. So this is an example of bats and their perception. We have on the left here what the bat looked like in the movie Bats. You can find it on Amazon videos. And in the movie they mentioned that this is a flying fox because it's the largest bat and they have genetically modified it to make it good for the military to use. But even so, outside of genetic modification, the flying foxes don't look like that at all. They don't have the short face. That's more often found in insectivorous bats, whereas the flying bats are actually fruit-eating bats. They have this very long snout and look much more like a dog than a lot of other bats, at least in the face. For bat evolution, it's not entirely clear which came first, the flight or the echolocation, but they are both essential adaptations for all bats that exist today. We can look at fossil evidence to see, did they have webbed arms or fingers at first? Did they have the bone structures or ears used in echolocations? But it's still something that is being discovered. Bats reproduce in these large maternal colonies called hibernacula. They like to get all close together to stay warm and will do so after mating. And they can typically live longer than expected. Echolocation is, again, a very important adaptation for bats. Despite the misconception that they are blind, they actually can see pretty well, at least most of them. And there are even some interesting moths who can reverse the echolocation that they use to confuse the bats into not being able to detect them. Again, there are fruit-eating bats like the flying fox, but most fruit-eating bats are going to be found in more tropical areas, and there aren't any that are native to North Carolina. We have microbats here in North Carolina, at least 17 bat species, and they have the shorter faces, rely a lot more on echolocation, especially when it comes to hunting insect species. They are all part of kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, and class Mammalia like all other mammals. They are in the order Chiroptera. Here are some examples of species of bats found in North Carolina. We've got the Virginia big-eared bat, which you guys will see a video on. We have the Mexican free-tailed bat, which has a more distinct tail that is not webbed like the other bats. The silvery-looking hoary bat, and quite a few others. Bats provide all kinds of different benefits to ecosystems. Many of the fruit bats provide pollination to many plants. Insect-eating bats are a very important member of the pest control group of organisms, and there's a lot to learn from them in the fields of medicine and research, whether it's from their saliva or the way that they carry diseases. So you may have heard about how bats carry disease, whether it's because of Ebola or maybe even coronavirus. So this has to do with bats' immune system. Unlike people, if you get sick, your immune system kicks on, and a lot of what happens is inflammation. Things swell and heat up, and part of that is to help fight whatever the disease is. And this doesn't really occur quite the same way in bats. They don't react to viruses quite the same way. They're not going to create that immune system response, the thing that makes you feel sick. So a virus can reproduce inside of a bat and not affect the bat. They don't get sick, but they can transmit it. which is dangerous for other organisms, especially areas that are being deforested where bats would live, because that means that bats are more likely to search out homes and other places that could be closer to humans and increase the likelihood that they would interact with them. This reaction to disease is also why they're susceptible to this thing called white nose syndrome. It's a fungal disease that affects their face, their eyes, their mouth, their nose, makes it hard to breathe, makes it hard to see. And without that immune response that's needed, that we have, that bats don't have, they're not fighting the disease. And in these very close colonies, the disease can spread rapidly. And when they come out of hibernation, they end up not being able to breathe well, not being able to eat, and eventually end up dying. So there's a lot to do with conservation, trying to prevent this white nose syndrome from spreading, trying to prevent destruction of habitat where these bats could live, and also adding habitat. I myself have a bat box outside my house. It's on my shed. What it helps to do is it gives bats a place to live. Now, it might be confusing. You don't want bats near your house, but if they have a place to live, a place to stay, like this bat box, they are less likely to find their way into your attic or other parts of your home. So a lot goes into protecting bats aside from these kinds of bat boxes in people's yards. There's protecting the land, protecting the ground underneath the land, because they often live in caves, so mineral rights are going to be important with that. Blocking off mine entrances and letting people know about hibernation so that they are not disturbed. You guys will have an ed puzzle about how we in North Carolina made some efforts to conserve populations of Virginia big-eared bats, which is pretty interesting. I hope this was helpful and that you enjoyed it, and thank you for watching.